seatbelt that held Fireball Roberts.
We didn't get to look at this car yet.
Fireball Roberts car. So this was pretty cool about these is that this particular car was raced by a number of different drivers, because back in the day, what would happen is if a car got wrecked or something happened to it, they'd pull up to Holman Moody up at the airport where we used to be, and they'd pull it into the front of the shop and go to the back and pick up a brand new car, and they'd go race that one instead of the same car. So instead of just repairing a car and coming back to it later, they just drop it off and go pick up a brand new one.
So it was almost like a rental deal?
Yeah, kind of like that. So Fireball, this is the Fireball livery, so this one's been redone to all hand letter. I mean, this stuff's awesome. It's all been hand brush painted and everything.
So who else drove this car?
I believe, I have to ask Lee again.
Like my Fireball car out there, we didn't build that car. We built 35 of them, or 40, and each team got 3 or 4. And if they wrecked one, they would take it to the back of the building and drop it off and go to the front of the building and pick up one that had been repaired. So each car got driven by whatever team picked it up. And so that purple car was painted yellow when Junior drove it. It was painted white when Fred Lorenzen drove it, and purple when Fireball drove it. But each of the cars had multiple history, multiple team usage. We were a factory building that many cars. There were only 3 or 4 companies in the world doing that at that time. Jaguar with their D-Jags, Ferrari with their Testarossas, and Holman Moody.
I mean, this thing's wicked. There's a couple different really cool. Yes, it just opens.
Oh, so
yeah, go ahead.
What holds it closed?
There's a pin that goes in there. It pins it closed. Yeah. So.
Is this like? Oh, this seat's like a factory seat.
Factory seat with a pool noodle and a piece of metal shoved in there. Yeah, good. See.
Oh, this is fantastic.
Oh, it is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And now, yeah, chop that steering wheel like a.
Oh yeah, this feels like my Monte Carlo.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Did they have GoPro mounts in '66?
Oh, you know, all the updates. Yeah, this one got raced at Goodwood in 2016, so we had it out there, ripping it around. Yeah, this reverse lockout on there.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's got a kind of a street cage. It's still got door bars though, which is pretty cool. They're still thinking about some safety back then.
So this is the original cage?
Yeah, they put the original cage. And this is all like, welding blankets that they just riveted into the floor. Like fiberglass, like welding blankets for fire protection, I guess.
How did they make this this leather print in the sheet metal? Did they roll it through something?
I don't know about this one, honestly.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked, huh?
Like there's no need to do that, but they did that.
Show.
Floor, just like fabricated floor. Is this still a factory rear suspension, or does it have truck arms?
You can look at it right here. I believe it's a truck arms.
This is so freaking cool.
I think this one's got. Yeah, this one's got leaves.
It's leaves.
Yeah, it's leaves. Yep, with 2 different shock mounts. But what's really cool about this, look back here.
This is a 9-inch rear.
9-inch rear, yep.
Leaf spring.
Couple different shock mounts.
That's crazy that it's pre-truck arm.
Yeah, pre-truck arm.
Got different print bridges.
Yeah, 63. This right here, it's a vent, so when you'd fill it up, it would come out, and there's a check ball in there, and it would pour out the back here, so when you knew it was full.
So this is like a primitive. Before they had catch cans, they just let it dump on pit road.
Jump out the back of it. And what happens is this is supposed to, when you roll the car, there's supposed to be a check ball that goes in and seals this, so it doesn't just roll and dump fuel out on the track.
Is that a blower for the rear end cooler?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's a blower motor with just a regular heater core that they've run all the gear loop through, and then that is the catch can, which is just an old spray bottle with the top cut off.
No, that is a spray paint can.
Yeah, it's a spray paint can. Yeah,
God.
that's hilarious.
Is that original to this car, or is...
I don't know if that one's original to this car, but I do know that's how they did it.
These block-off plates have that stamping in them too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, if I were to do one of these cars, I don't think I'd ever make a street version. It'd just be this.
This is so cool.
Yeah, I love this thing. It's awesome.
They got the fenders riveted on so they could change them easier.
Yeah, and then this is right here. These are pulley straps.
Yeah.
So the back glass would fly out when you're going down the racetrack because they didn't have windows. So it just blow the air and it'd pull throw their back glass out on the track if they weren't careful.
Big parachutes. So this is how those originated at first, to keep the windows in.
Keep the windows in from flying out and racing them.
You can pause and read this. Okay, Fred Lorenzen, Fireball Roberts. Does it run?
It does. I don't know. I haven't seen it run in a while, but man, if Lee was here, he'd start it. Cal inductions. So this is cool stuff, man. Like, this is back in the day. Like, they were pulling it fresh air from the Cal because it's low pressure, so you'd make more power that way. You can actually get it. Where all this is cold air, and they pull it right from in here. And it's awesome is if they kept it. I don't know if they sealed it, but you could hear the intake noises because it's all all the cowling's open to the inside of the car, so you could hear all the all the noises coming out.
Because Cup cars still work that way.
They all still have the cowling.
They had the hole there and these boxes there because this is like the highest force, so you actually get a kind of a ram air effect from that.
Exactly. It's awesome.
What does the exhaust look like on this thing? It's got no H pipe. It just sticks right on out the side.
Yeah, they just put a hole through it and welded a little tube section in there.
That's neat. I like that.
Yeah, you can see all the battle scars from all the missed jack points over the years. They just they slide in there and crush the rocker. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They didn't even have a jack peg back then. They just put it right on the. It looks like they braced the frame right here.
Yeah.
Because it was probably getting dented from getting jacked up.
I mean, because they had the one pump jacks. I mean, they're over there just laying on it and lifting that thing up in the air.
There's all kinds of dents on that frame rail too. Like it had been patched.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would say this thing's probably not a lick straight anymore.
Man, it's still in great shape though.
Oh my gosh. This one was set up in Darlington Museum for the longest time.
That's cool. They got that poke through the frame like that. I might try to do that.
That's what I was saying when I saw that. I was like, well, that just gives me all the info I need to do a side angle.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Hutchison pulling out of the pits. My dad's right here, and I'm right there.
Wow. What year is that?
66. That's the Ford versus Ferrari
That's crazy.
deal.
So having actually been there and witnessed it, what do you think of that movie?
It was totally inaccurate, but then it was a movie. That was Reims in 1965. I went over a year early to learn how to get cars through customs and all of that. That's me fueling the Cobra Coupe. 20 years old and forced to be in Europe under those conditions.
You got the same shirt.
Yeah, I did these for Goodwood, and the NASCAR guys had their, the wooden pattern there is the original mahogany pattern for the single overhead cam valve cover, the master tool to make those.
Really? Wow.
You go.
So
Hand machine mahogany, and it's double oversized shrink so that you cast the aluminum tube to then make the core boxes to cast the real valve covers.
Huh.
So that's what they call a double oversized shrink. On the table is one of our scrapbooks, but on top of it is the seat belt that held Fireball Roberts.
That
Yep.
is
It was kind of NASCAR's fault that he died because they were using volunteer firemen as their safety crews. And the guy that was doing the aluminized suit didn't want to go, so he let his neighbor wear the suit to get a free ticket. So the guy that had this fireproof suit wouldn't go near the fire.
Wow.
When Fireball flipped and caught fire.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
And that's his
That's the seat belt that couldn't get undone.
How?
And that guy could have just waded in and cut the belt and got him out of it.
How did you end up with that?
Well, it was our car. And we scrapped it, and I just kept that.
Wow. That's...
The black and white pictures, our team in 1957, 56. My dad standing up on the left, Ralph Moody, Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, Marvin Panch, Bill Amick. There's a little letter right there from Don Fry. We were under team orders not to pass a Shelby car unless a Ferrari passed a Shelby car. That's why we finished third.
Really? So is that the real letter? Like, that's not a photocopy
I think
or
that's
anything?
the letter from Don Fry. I showed it to the guys today. Is it Don Fry's signature on the bottom?
June 30, 1965.
That's so cool.
That's insane.
We've got all the old race records, all the old details and stuff. Signed checks. Fred Lorenzen's win at Darlington in '61 paid $2,400 to win.
What was the dynamic like between you guys and Shelby back then? You were like technically on the same team, but you weren't. How did that work?
Well, the history goes back farther than that. At the first race at Riverside, my dad was talking to his former employer, Arcus Duntoff, and my dad was a tool and die maker and machinist, and he worked for Duntoff on some of his projects. And we were standing, I was like 11 years old, and we're standing talking to Mr. Duntoff, and Carol Shelby walked up. And my dad said, "Come on, Lee, let's go over here." And as we walked away, he said, "That damn Texans are crook. I can't stand to be around the son of a..." And it was 100% for Shelby, nothing for anybody else. You never could get him to pay 100% of an invoice. And so knowing that, when I needed $3,000 for the patterns for the Girling CR brakes, I charged him $4,000. He paid $3,000, but he still owed me $1,000 according to the invoice. 2 years later, he called up, "Holman, you got any 427s? "Yeah, I got a couple." "Yeah, ship me one, I need one." "No, you haven't paid me for the last invoice, the last stuff I sold you." And he said, Lee, don't you understand business? That was an old deal. I got you in that one. This is a new deal. You can't let old business interfere with new business.
What?
It made perfect sense to him, because that's the way he did business. And I said, "No, thank you." And this was for those chassis that he claimed he found in his warehouse that were original real Cobra chassis that he really had McCluskey make the year before. But he had certified to the DOT that those were 65 original real chassis. And I said, "Really? We're not going to sell you an engine." He said, "Can I get a 390 rebuilt? Don't they look just like a 427? And I said, "Yeah, they look a lot like a 427. And he said, will you build me a 390? I said, "No, because you will tell your customers that you paid us for a 427 and we cheated you, because they'll eventually find out." He said, "The dumb son of bitches that buy these cars could never know the difference." But that's the type of person he was. And everybody thinks he walks on water. His crew chief, Al Dowd, retired, and the employees paid for a retirement party for him. This was after Shelby was closed. And Shelby showed up at it. And Al Dowd got up, it was his turn to speak, and said, "If it hadn't been so much money, so much fun to spend Ford's money and your money to travel around the world racing at the best tracks in the country with more money than the other teams, so we were pretty sure to win, I would have told you to fuck off years ago. I hate you," and walked out of the meeting. That was his crew chief of 20 years.
Wow.
So that's kind of the way everybody thought about Carol Shelby.
Wow.
You
That's
saw
kind of crazy.
You saw the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah.
Leo Beebe comes off as a real jerk in the movie. He was
That
a
was
very
Carroll Shelby.
articulate, very nice gentleman. Big hammer. He could lop your head off if it was required.
Mm-hmm.
But he was articulate. And my daughter and I were displaying our GT40 and our Ferrari up at Lime Rock. And Mr. Beebe was the guest speaker at the Shelby Club banquet. And he saw my daughter and I, and we knew him quite well. And he came over and said, Lee, would it be possible for Jan and I to have dinner at your table this evening? Because I've been with Carroll Shelby for 4 straight days, and the normal lethal dose is only 2. But that's the way Leo Beebe would speak. Beebe was the guy that converted the Willow Run truck factory into aircraft factory in World War II. And he told me over dinner one night that the problem of building a truck an hour required 30,000 parts, be at the right table at the right time before computers. The airplanes had 1,300,000 individual parts, wires and pieces and stuff. And getting 1,000,003 parts at the right table at the right time so people didn't run over each other was logistically unbelievable. But we did it, and they produced a plane a day.
Wow.
And somebody that can do that's a pretty bright sucker, you know. He was switched on.
Did Carroll Shelby and Leo Beebe have a bad relationship like they showed in the movie?
Well, Leo Beebe's passed away. Iacocca's family is still active in promoting Iacocca. Iacocca was the jerk. Henry II was the jerk. Mm-hmm. Leo Beebe was not. So that movie was not about the Le Mans race. Mm-hmm. It was taken from a book about the relationship between Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby.
Yeah.
And the race part of it was just
fabricated
part
a
of
lot of it.
Just part of the ambiance of their relationship. It was not a featured thing. There were lots of better books about the race, but they didn't do that, and they didn't talk to anybody anywhere that had ever been to a race. In one scene, the Shelby character rolls a card out, and he says, "This is the way we're going to speed up our pit stops. We'll just change this." And it was a complete front upright assembly with A-frame shocks, brakes, everything attached. And it would only take you about 2 hours to swap that out. And you got 3 more to swap. But that's how, in the movie, they said, we're going to speed up the pit stop. And one, they're at Daytona, and the guy said, how can they pit so quick? And the other guy says, it's those damn NASCAR guys. That's us. We just had our act together. When Beebe asked us to join the program, he told Carroll Shelby when he was bitching about it that you're just a race team. Holman Moody's a factory. We need a factory. We got to get this stuff finished. And that's what we did.
That's interesting. You say you never would have known that.
Yeah. We had 600 employees at that time and one customer, Henry Ford II. Every one of them was doing something for Ford. In comparison, it was costing Ford $1 million a day, or no, $1 million a week to keep. That's not $1 million a month. It was about $14 million a year. We were getting $1 million a month from Ford to fund all of the drag racing, all of the GTs, all of the NASCAR, everything. About $1 million a month, and we were getting the job done. And Hendrick and Joe Gibbs both have about 600 employees, and it takes them $1 million every business day to keep the doors open.
Wow.
It's just different times. Labor more, travels more, parts are more. The Ford thing was impressive. The most money ever dumped into racing in one big lump. Ford spent more that year in their ads for the Super Bowl. So in the overall image of money, it's chump change. Didn't matter. But to racing, it was a big deal.
That's really interesting. So for all those GT40s, what parts did Shelby actually do? Like, did they get their own bare chassis and put it together, and you guys did too, or did they get stuff from you? And
they got all the parts and pieces from England, and the chassis from England, and they assembled them. And what we started doing was making the headers, modifying the bearings, modifying the hubs, modifying the uprights. changing the suspension stuff. Shelby had never seen a surface plate, so they didn't know how to do a Johnson rebound engineering study of the suspension, where the parts were going as they would go up and down. Do they toe in, toe out? They just raced them. We had the capacity to do all of that. And so we came in to sort it out. If you look at the history of the GT40, it didn't do anything. The Mark 1s were barely competitive and only rarely finished. And the Mark 2s were a dismal failure until the fall of '65, when we were asked to get involved, and they won everything they went to after that.
Because of the chassis setup.
The parts, the pieces, and the way you put it together. We made all the headers. We did all of that. We did a lot of the engine work. Pieces.
That's cool. Yeah, we never really knew how that
The
system
small
worked.
blocks were not successful. They kept falling out, and we're not able to logistically stand the pressure. Because the little small block, you had to turn them 8,500 to get enough power to push it through the air. And then they were only capable of like 190. Well, the Ferraris could do 180 or 190, but they couldn't do 220. And they couldn't do 220 for a full day. And we could. So you just steamroll them. You enter more cars because you could have a driver failure, you could have a spin out, you could have a tire blow, you could have a piece fail that was normally a good piece, but it would fail. So you have to send 8 or 10 cars to go do the job. But any one of those cars could have done the job if they didn't have some extraneous hindrance.
What was Robert Yates like when he started working here?
He had just graduated from diesel mechanics training school, and we gave him his first job. He was just one of 10, 12 engine guys, and he wasn't the best. But he was a good promoter, and he promoted himself into sponsors and set up his own shop. I liked Robert, he was good, but Jimmy Tucker was a better engine builder. Tommy Turner was a better engine builder as far as just doing the engine, but they never promoted themselves like that. Nobody else was doing race cars in mass. And we could build an entire car except for the windshields in our building.
Really?
We could stamp the body panels if we wanted to. We could do anything.
The interchangeable gears on the transmission, you guys designed all of that?
Yep.
That's really cool.
We're still making them today. I've got one back there that we're doing. It's a magnesium case with a Ford top loader guts.
That's awesome.
What parts and pieces and things do you still make today that people can buy?
You can buy the whole car. It's $1 million. You know, we do everything that we did with 600 employees. We just takes more time, and we just keep doing it. Larry Wallace started grinding cams for us in '64. He's still grinding cams today.
That's really cool.
On the same machines?
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing ever. How do you feel about the way things are now with the cars and the drivers and how that all is?
Well, the problem they have is there's a reason he couldn't really win many races, because his wallet was so thick that his foot couldn't reach the gas pedal. Our drivers didn't make that much money. They were there to kick ass and take names. The drivers today are spokesperson for Napa or DuPont or whoever, and they're getting paid $3 or $4 million a year to be a spokesperson, plus what they get for driving the race car. And if you had $8-10 million in the bank, would you go out and risk your neck really trying to race, really banging into people and doing stuff? But Fireball and Turner and Weatherly and Lorenzen and our drivers, they were racing because they had to make a house payment next week. They, it was not a rich sport. We won the championship in '68, '69, and it was most of the major races and the championship, and we won $1 million. And David's half of it was $500,000. They get that if they qualify good at Daytona.
You think a lot of it has to do with all the restrictions and rules that they have in place now? It makes it easier for kind of the spoon-fed kids
No,
to...
it's just that the sponsors started bringing in money. The young Ford on the side of the purple car meant that young Ford loaned us a truck for a year, a pickup, or they loaned us a station wagon to take the coat to the racetrack in. We had to give it back at the end of the year, but that was big time sponsorship.
Yeah.
Got the use of a car.
Well, we figure that's about as good a place to end as any. We could sit there and talk to Lee all day. Probably will, eventually, hopefully. We're definitely going to go back there. If you haven't seen the main factory tour video, you need to go watch that. They have all the old machinery and stuff in there from the original stuff in the 60s, like he said.
Tour.
Yeah, the shop.
Factory tour.
Factory tour, shop tour, whatever. It's basically like a functional museum in there. It's pretty awesome. I'd really like to go back there and do a whole video just like about the cam grinding, or like how you use the old machines, that kind of stuff. What did you find most fascinating about all of that?
Everything.
Yeah. I thought it was funny going through re-editing the footage whenever he said that was Fireball Robert's seatbelt. It just stood there, pointing the camera at it, and I was just like, like, I thought I had to say something, but I couldn't think of anything to say. I was just dumbfounded that was sitting on the table.
Yeah, that was really sad. When he was explaining the firefighter that wouldn't go save him, I was like, damn, that's like really heavy. I feel like I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, it was terrible. Anyway, on a lighter note, we have a second channel now that we started for kind of behind the scenes nonsense of what we're doing here, because we know all the casual people have gone on to watch something useless a long time ago. If you're still watching this, we know that you're like a cut above the rest. So you can find that at Stapleton 42 Extra, what it's called. I'll pin a comment from that account on the top so you can find it. And what are you gonna, you got a birthday cake for Ruger and stuff?
Oh, it's in the fridge.
Oh, well, they'll have to go to the other channel to see it.
Oh, okay.
I just want to tell them what was going to be on there.
Yeah, it's his birthday.
And we have those shirts now too. They're like the Gildan dry blend style instead of the next levels. So if you don't like the next level kind of fittedness, you can get the regular ones. Just plain logo on the front, nothing on the back. And these hats, the large, extra large flex fit hats are going pretty quick. We only had a few of those left now. You can find those at StapletonAutoWorks.com. That's what we do. Everything gets packed here with a note signed by both of us, written by her. That's how we pay the rent here. Just this. So if you're here, we appreciate you. If you don't want to get a shirt, we won't hurt our feelings, but it'd be cooler if you did. You know what that's from. All right, we are going to turn the camera off and go film some bonus videos for the Stapleton 42 Extra channel, so check that out.
This is Ruger. If you were wondering who Ruger was, he turned 6 today. So, very exciting. He has a birthday cake, and we're gonna have a party.